Hello and welcome back to the Reapers. Today we're in our FA-18C Hornet and we're looking at using the SA page, the situational awareness page. Now, first thing to note, obviously we're at a very early stage of its development, currently early June 2019, and so lots of stuff's going to be changing. You guys have said that you want this video because you're struggling to use it, and to be honest, so am I. So I'm going to get on from what I've learnt from watching AWACS' videos and just messing around, and we're just going to break it down into sizable chunks, take it from there. So in a few months, when all this is finished off in the Hornet, we'll do another video covering all of the extra modifications and aspects. So to let you know what we've got, first of all, we've got a Hornet here, that's us. We've got some waypoints there, and we've got a bunch of good guys and bad guys in front of us, a mixture of fighters and bombers. So let's get in the mission. Okay, we're in the cockpit now. Let me just put that on pause. So the first thing we're going to do is set the cockpit up as if we were actually going to have it. So the stick away. We're going to set this guy here, the AMPCD, to the SA page. We could have the SA page there or there, but this seems the natural place to have it. Back to main menu, SA page, and that's that for now. Next, we're going to be on our EW page here. There, set up, and we're going to be on our attack radar here. We'll just show going into there. Attack radar there. So that's going to be our basic setup. So this is our situational awareness page here. This takes information from various sources. In this case, it takes information from our electronic warfare page, or our RWR here. It also takes information from our attack radar here, which is mounted on the front of the aircraft. And it also takes information from donor aircraft. Those donor aircraft in our Datalink could be, for instance, an AWACS or another fighter. And all that information is merged together and plotted on here to give us the maximum situational awareness of the battle area. So to go about this, we're first of all going to show the HOTAS controls that we're going to use. Then we're going to show all the different options that we've got here and give them a brief description of what works, what doesn't, and what they do. Then we're going to go into a first example where we've got no Datalink partners at all. It's just us with our RWR and our radar. Then we're going to go back and add a donor aircraft. In this case, it would be an AWACS we'll put in, and see the differences of when we've got a Datalink partner. So let's go and look at today's controls. So to do work on the situational awareness page or the attack radar or the RWR, we need to make that the sensor of interest, and we'll do that through sensor control switch left, right, or aft, and aft will be the SA page, obviously. For when it comes to mode for IFFing someone, we're going to be using the new button, the sensor control switch to press. To lock a target in an STT lock, which we'll need to do, sorry, wrong one, we need throttle designator control depress, and the TDC down, up, left and right to slew our cursor around. I think that will do it for today. So before we look at the various controls we've got on the AMPCD and the DDIs, we've got to make sure we've got our IFF and our Datalink turned on. So for the Datalink, we're going to click on Datalink on the UFC. We've got to make sure it's on here. If it's not, then we press and hold on. They're currently all defaulted to 127 megahertz. There is no way of changing that, and the AWACS and everyone on our Datalink is automatically going to be set to 127. Now that may change in the future, but for the time being you do not need to ever change that. That is a standard that just works all of the time. Also, we've got these options down here, but none of them are implemented at the moment, so we're just not going to worry about that. Let's just worry about the stuff that works. Then we've got the IFF, and all we have to do is make sure that it's turned on. So again, press and hold to make sure it's turned on, and that's that. Next, I think we'll look at the attack radar. Okay, so as for the attack radar, and bearing in mind the scope of this video, all we want to look at the moment is, first of all, the checkable box for NCTR, the non-cooperative target recognition. So if we're not able to, and I'll go through this in a bit in more detail, IFF a target via its transponder, via typical means, then we can use this to force our radar to IFF for us. So we always want to leave that checked. I haven't found a situation where I want to uncheck that. As well as if we go in data here, we get latent track while scan. That's usually ticked on from a hot start, but I've just turned it off for this example, and we'll try turning it on later. For the scope of this video, all it really means is that it will do the mode for interrogations automatically. Okay, and I'm going to come out of there. And as we'll see in a bit, to mode for interrogate a target with the attack radar here, we're going to be using the center select switch depress button, and we'll come to that shortly. Now let's look at the SA page. So this is the basic SA page. It's quite similar to the HSI, obviously, as I'm sure you're aware. Let's just quickly buzz through the things that are on here. First of all, we've got our chaff and flares shown here. We've got an expendable button, but that doesn't do anything. We've got a step button, that doesn't do anything. We've got a TX designate, that doesn't do anything yet. And then we've got auto all the way up to waypoint here. And these are the same things that they do on the HSI. So what I'm going to do is I've already got some pre-programmed in waypoints. The first thing I'm going to go and do is put a bullseye on this mission. This isn't really something I want to cover in this video, but I'm just going to do it quickly. So I'm going to go back to HSI. I'm going to go to data. I'm going to make waypoint 3 a bullseye. I'm going to go back to the SA page. And the reason I put a bullseye in is because it's going to allow us to see some extra data. Out of interest, it shows the bullseye here, it's waypoint 3, and that arrow there is pointing north. We're currently heading west, I believe. And while we're on the topic of bullseye, it's very important to mention that we can't just put bullseye wherever we want. We have to put that bullseye on a waypoint that is on the same position as the mission bullseye as set in the mission editor. And the main reason for that is that all radio calls from the artificial intelligence are referenced to the mission editor set bullseye. So in this case we would have put waypoint 3 to the mission bullseye. So these things here I'm sure you're all familiar with already. We can cycle between waypoints, so that's not 1, we can cycle between waypoints 2, 1 and 0 where we started. We could designate a waypoint for weapons, and we can sequence our waypoints and see the track between the various waypoints. We can do automatically update our waypoints as we reach them with auto or manual here, and our waypoint selector button there. Next is our decenter. So as standard, the screen is centered on our aircraft there, and we can, instead of that, centralize it kind of in front of us, and I'll show that now. And you can see that the screen is no longer centered on us. Instead, it's centered in front of our aircraft by the amount of miles that was set on the scale value. Turn that off. Mark II currently doesn't do anything. The scale, as you already know, change the scale. So let's go to 80 miles for the time being. So that would mean that from us there, or where we are there, right there, to the edge of the compass rose is 80 miles. We've got declutter, and I can't actually remember if that works, so no, that doesn't work at the moment. We've got map, so we can overlay the map. That's quite cool, overlaying the map. It gives you an extra bit of situational awareness in terms of coastlines, mountains, but it does make everything a bit harder to see, so we're going to turn that off for today. Sensor, first of all, C2 doesn't do anything yet. Sensor is our most interesting one for today, so we're going to click in there. So this is a way of filtering how the SA page works. Well, these guys up here determine what's going to be displayed and how it's going to be displayed. The SA page is if you just want to return to the main page. We've got, I'll go through these in a minute, and we've got contributors here. So where do we start? So if we're on a data link, and I should say at this point the Hornet works on what's called a Link 16 data link. The Link 16 is just the version. For instance, several years before this we would have had F-14 Comcats, and they would have worked on an earlier version of data link called Link 4. Now, as far as I'm aware, these data links use radio to communicate information automatically between different aircraft, whether that's fighter to fighter or fighter to AWACS or AWACS to fighter. So we'll start here. Surveillance. If we want to show what any surveillance members of our data link are contributing to our data link, so when I say surveillance we mean AWACS aircraft, and if we've had this clicked on then it will show what they are contributing. If we click it off then it will cut out what they are contributing, and in this case we don't have any surveillance aircraft anyway, so it's not going to make any difference. Next is this PPLI. It stands for Precise Participant Location and ID. I don't know why it's such a strange name, but all it means is if there are other aircraft contributing to your Link 16 data link, again, e.g. a fighter with Link 16 or an AWACS, then you can show them with this text on, or if you turn it off, then that will hide them. It will not hide the data that they present, it literally just hides them. So again, we're just filtering what we see on this page. Next we've got FF, fighter to fighter. So if we just want to exclude data that's being provided to our SA page from fellow fighters, i.e. the fighter to fighter side of the data link, then we can click that and that data will then disappear. Obviously that will not affect what's being shown to us via AWACS. We've got OCS 1 and 2, they don't do anything at the moment. We've got unknown. So each contact, and these are contacts here, have symbology on them. First of all, they have a direction vector, so you can see the little line coming out. That shows that they're all heading towards us. Obviously, if they're heading in this south direction, then the line would come out that way. Their colour means if they are unknown, friendly or hostile. Yellow is unknown, hostile is red, green is friendly. Currently, these are all unknown because we have not IFF'd them yet, and none of our Datalink partners have IFF'd them. Not that we've got any at the moment. As well as the colour, there's also the shape. If the upside shape here is a square or a square box, half a box like that, then it is unknown. If it is a chevron, then it's a hostile. If it's a dome, then it's a friendly. We've also got numbers here. This is displaying the targets in a threat-based pattern. So 1, 2, 3, 4. That is determined by things like their direction, their speed, and their range to us. Now, at the moment, as it stands, all of these, what they're called tracks, these things are tracks representing a contact or a target. And these tracks are currently constituted entirely from our own aircraft sensors, or basically our attack radar. We know that because they've only got the upper half of the symbol. You see how they've only got the upper half of the square. If they had the lower half of the square, like that, then that would mean that their track was also coming from a Datalink partner, an AWACS or a contributor, an AWACS or a friendly fighter that's in the Link 16 network. If it had the lower part of the symbol here and not the upper part, then it would be purely coming from a Datalink partner and not from our sensor at all. So at the moment we can say all of these targets are purely coming from our sensor, and we know that because we're the only one on the Datalink. If we unpause, what we could do is move this cursor around here. It's a bit hidden at the moment, and we can actually get information about these targets. So what I'm going to do is just unpause. We're going to do a lot of pausing today because otherwise we'll miss opportunities to do things. Let me just so to be able to use this screen, we need to make this our sensor of interest. To do that, we need to press, in this case, Center Select Switch Aft. And you can see when we do that, we get a little diamond saying it's ready for use. So we can move this guy with the TDC slew. And if I move it over that target there, we don't know anything about that target in terms of IFF. But what we do know is, firstly, that on the left and the right of the TDC cursor has now been populated with, as you can see, 0.6 on the left and 16 on the right. So that's saying that the guy's Mach is 0.6, the guy that we've got the TD cursor on top of, and his Angels is 16,000 feet ASL. And additional information going to be highlighted down here. Currently it's an unknown type of aircraft. It's moving at 399 knots ground speed. Its current heading is 086, and remember that track headings are always going to be in magnetic rather than true. Its bra from me to it is 275 degrees at 35 miles. Its bra from the bullseye, and bullseye, remember we selected as waypoint 3 here, is 311 bearing for 49 miles. And while we're looking at this data, I forgot to mention there is also data here about the about waypoints, and that's just the same stuff as copied through from the HSI. So whatever waypoint we've got selected at the moment, it's 081 from us and 0.7 miles. It's probably waypoint 0 and would take 7 seconds to get there. Before we leave these symbols here, there's one more thing to add, which is the contribution from the RWR or the EW page, and that is this little triangle here. It's currently hiding. There's a target under there. But it's telling us here that there is a information from the RWR and RWR nails of 29, so that is the type of radar that it's detecting. It's going to be a MiG-29 or Su-27 in that case, and it's coming from that angle there. It will always be the RWR around the compass rose here, because we'd never have a range of the RWR. So in this case, the way we would use that RWR is that we would essentially draw a line from this RWR contact here to us, an imaginary line, and whichever of the targets that intercepts that line is the one that is relevant for this radar signal. So it's going to be this guy here. So what we could say is that already by looking at this, we know that this guy here, we don't know if it's friendly or hostile, but we know he's a MiG-29. Purely out of interest, just to double check that. There he is, he's the MiG-29. The reason we're not getting a load of other RWR nails is because I made these things vehicles without radars, so just to declutter it a bit. And of course I've got to mention the compass rose around here, which is just the compass rose, so we're heading in roughly a westerly direction because that's up from us. So before we go any further into the options around the outside of the SA page, I wanted to just nail down a bit further and look a little closer at the iconology that we've been looking at and go through all the different things that you're likely to see on the SA page to clear it up, and the reasons for which you will be seeing them. So I've titled this page the FA-18C Hornet Link 16 SA page symbology and HAFU. HAFU is a key word here. It stands for hostile, ambiguous, friendly, unknown. The HAFU means this little guy here. So if we ignore the tail and we just look at the symbol around the threat priority number, we get what we call the HAFU. And the HAFU can be four things. It can be a hostile, it can be ambiguous, it can be friendly, or it can be unknown. And it can't be anything else. And the HAFU is created by the different IFF methods that have been attempted on that track or that target via members of our Datalink. So we've got the different HAFU possibilities here, the different combinations, and we'll explain what is required to make up each combination, and then we've just got a few examples we can chat about here, and then we'll go back to the main video. So roughly split, we've got yellow over here. Yellow means unknown. We do not know the coalition of the track or the target. Red is hostile. We do know the coalition of the track, and green is friendly. So let's look at our first one here. So if we're in a data link that only consists of us, then a lot of the time we're going to see this. First of all, we've got the threat priority number. We've already talked about that. And the tail, or the vector, we've talked about that. And we've got the top half of the HAFU. The HAFU consists of two halves, the top half and the bottom half. And as we said, the upper half here is a contribution from us in terms of IFF, and the bottom half is a contribution from other Datalink members in terms of IFF. So this HAFU combination is known as unknown. We've got no contribution via other members on the Datalink, or offboard as we call them, and we have no IFF confirmation from us, what we call onboard IFF. So onboard IFF is none, offboard IFF is none. That means essentially that there is no IFF clarification from any members of the Datalink at the moment on this track here. Next, we've got this example. This is classified as ambiguous. The HAFU is ambiguous. The onboard IFF, i.e. us, has none. We've got no clarification of IFF, and hence we have the square at the top. And offboard, we have had either a surveillance, so an AWACS, or a friendly fighter, i.e. another member of our Datalink, successfully IFF this guy as friendly. So from us, we've got unknown. From the offboard member, we've got friendly, and hence ambiguous. Next, another example of ambiguous. The same thing or a similar thing. We have not managed to successfully IFF this track here, but an offboard member, surveillance or friendly fighter, has managed to successfully IFF this guy, and he's got him set here as a hostile, i.e. a chevron. Down here we've got the RWR. I just plonked this in because it was a yellow colour. In this case, I believe RWR symbols are always yellow. I stand to be corrected there. And again, they work around the compass rose and just show you azimuth based on RWR detection. Next, we'll look at tracks that have been designated hostile on the SA page. So this guy here has been designated hostile. Now look that the upper half of the HAFU is chevron and it's red, and we have no lower half of the HAFU. So in this case, onboard IFF is mode 4 plus NCTR. We'll go through that in just a second and a bit more later in the video. But the offboard IFF is none. So in this case, let's say we've got no Datalink partners at all, so we having to do all the IFF, then we can still get it to turn red, i.e. to confirm that it is hostile with just our onboard sensors. Now note that the Hornet has what we're called two-factor IFF. So it needs at least two of the Hornet's onboard sensors to successfully IFF a track before it'll turn red. And you really only want to be shooting at a target once it's turned red. So the methods of IFF we have on board on our aircraft are mode 4 transponder interrogation, and we're going to go through that a little bit later in the video, so I won't explain it, but that's one method we have. We also have NCTR, which is another method. This uses our radar, and we're going to go into further detail of that again later in the video. So we've successfully turned this track red by getting 2 sources on board our aircraft to identify it as hostile. If we only had mode 4, we could not turn it red. If we only had NCTR, we could not turn it red. We need both. Note the difference between this and this here. This, the TDC cursor, which is the yellow stuff here, is not quite on that track. Here it is on the track, and therefore it is telling us the MAC of the target there and the angels of the target there, altitude in thousands of feet, ASL. So next we've got hostile, but a different variant. Here we've got authentication from onboard and offboard. So note the top half of the HAFU is chevron, and the bottom half of the HAFU is chevron. So in this case, because we've got the bottom half, which has come from offboard, which can be, you know, surveillance, say E3 Sentry or whatever, and it could come from a friendly fighter in the Datalink network. Because we've got this offboard IFF, we no longer need both of our IFF onboard methods, because you remember I was saying 2-factor authentication. One of those factors could be an offboard IFF. So in this case, we've got authentication from either a surveillance or a fighter, friendly fighter, or it could be both of those. And to get a double chevron and a red like this, then we only would have to use one of our methods, so mode 4 or NCTR, or it could be both of them. And if we'd used both of them, that would have given us a 3-factor authentication, which you don't need. 2 is all you ever need. Then we've got this guy here. Now, the first thing to point out is that 1, there's no number in the middle, and 2, it's 3/4 of the size of a normal HAFU. So if you see one like this, what it means is that you, on board, we are not picking it up. We are not picking this guy up on our attack radar. We might have our radar turned off. We might be facing a different direction. We may not have the correct elevation set on a radar, so we can't paint this guy with our radar. But we can see it because it's coming from members of our Datalink, either a surveillance aircraft or a friendly fighter. So it's important to realize the difference between a full size and a 3/4 size. Now, it doesn't have a number in the middle because it can't be in our threat series, which is what our numbers are, because our radar can't see it, and therefore it can't put it in our onboard threat series of numbers. Now, there is another circumstance that we may or may not see later, is that when this starts to flash, if this starts to flash, that means that it's no longer being highlighted by one of these guys either, and in fact no one can see it, and it will flash for several seconds, which means that it's working kind of in memory mode. Basically, it's just remembering where that guy is or where he should be, but it's not actually being highlighted. And if several seconds go by and he's still not being picked up by any of these methods in terms of radar, then it will finally disappear. So let's go on to the friendlies. So here is our own ship. Here is us, our FA-18, and you can see the exact position where we are. That circle with a 0 on it, pretty sure that's something separate. I'm pretty sure that's waypoint 0, and it just so happens we're at or near waypoint 0 at the time of taking this screenshot. Next is a friendly HAFU. This track here, it's been decided, is friendly by onboard only, no offboard source. So we've got the upper HAFU is green and it's a dome, and we've got no lower HAFU. So on board, to get this, we would need a mode 4 or NCTR. Now, note that that's different. We go back to here. For a hostile, to get it to turn red, to get the hostile authentication, we need 2-factor, mode 4 and NCTR, assuming we've got no offboard. And again, the same here. Friendly is not the same. A friendly, we just need 1-factor, mode 4 or NCTR. So that's a big distinction we need to make between the difference between IFFing a friendly and a hostile. Next, friendly, what I call a full-blooded friendly. So you've got just about everything to confirm this is friendly. You've got your onboard as a mode 4 or an NCTR, so that's just 1-factor there. But we've got the addition here of offboard, it's surveillance or friendly fighter. You can see you've got the upper dome HAFU and the lower dome HAFU and green. Next is a Link 16 donor surveillance aircraft. If you see this, which you probably will at some point, that's telling you it's a surveillance aircraft, which is an AWACS. We know it's a surveillance aircraft because it's got the dot in the middle of the HAFU, and we know it's a Link 16 contributor to our particular network because it's got that little dot there. We can also see it's friendly. Next is another contributor to our Datalink network, but it's not a surveillance aircraft. So it's got the Link 16 donor dot there, but no dot in the middle, so it's not a surveillance aircraft. So this could be an F-15 or something that's in our Datalink network. And finally, an off-board only friendly. Again, 3/4 of the size because we are not seeing this on our radar. So we're turned the other way or something like that. We've got a radar off maybe. It's been shown off board by either a surveillance or a friendly fighter. Again, if this is not painted by any of those radars for several seconds, it will flash for several seconds in memory mode, and eventually it will disappear until it's picked up again by a member of the network. And before we go back to the main video, and sorry it's taking so long, but there's a lot to understand here and it's what you guys have asked for. So 3 quick mission examples here. 1, ownship only. 2, ownship with AWACS or surveillance. 3, ownship with friendly fighter. And I do apologise, I think I've just written that wrong as I tend to do. I think number 3 is actually meant to be ownship with AWACS, but I believe we've got our radar off. So we'll just go through it one by one. So all we've got to do is work the logic as based on this kind of chart up here. So in example 1, we've got us there, there's our waypoint 0 there, there's our TDC cursor there. In this case, we've got no contributors to our Datalink network, it's just us with our onboard sensor. That guy is a red chevron upper HAFU only, so it means it's that there, which means that we have got successful two-factor IFF authentication with a mode 4 transponder attempt and a successful NCTR. So the computer, the SA page has turned in red, and with that we're good to shoot at him. We're certain it is a hostile. Next, there's this guy up here, which means he's here, which means he's not been highlighted by any Datalink partners because we've not got any, but we have got one-factor authentication. We've got either mode 4 transponder or NCTR, or possibly both. Here, out of interest, we've got an RWR contact of a MiG-29 or Su-27. All we can tell from that is the azimuth of that hostile, no ranging, and a way I like to do it is kind of draw an imaginary line from me to it, and any hostiles that get in that line is that's the guy that it is probably. In this case, I imagine he's further outside our compass rose than 40 miles, so we probably just can't see him yet, or just outside of our radar detection. And then we've got this guy here. One thing I should point out also is the threat priority 1, threat priority 2, threat priority. Note how this guy doesn't have a threat priority because he's green. He's not considered a threat. This guy has to be considered a threat because he's unknown. So this guy here is this guy here. So this guy here, we've likely not made any IFF attempts on yet. And he's seen by our radar, but no Datalink partners radars for obvious reasons. So our aim as the operator of our aircraft would be to turn this guy either into a chevron or a dome, and we will do that by 1 or 2 factor authentication, which we'll go through in the main video. Okay, here is a bit of a weird one. We've got us here. We've got this time a buddy. We've got a surveillance aircraft we can see here, so he's going to be providing extra information for us. This one's an interesting one. We've got a hostile here with an upper HAFU, so that means we have identified this guy with 2-factor onboard identification, and we've got him as threat priority 1, probably based on his distance to us. So we've got mode 4 and NCTR. Interestingly, there's no lower HAFU, so for some reason this AWACS here can't see this guy. Don't know why, but that's just how it is. Next, there's this guy who is going to be this guy here. He's friendly and he's confirmed by onboard sensors, either or, my 2, and AWACS here. This guy here is ambiguous. He's been confirmed by AWACS as hostile, but no onboard single factor authentication has yet. I haven't IFF'd him yet, basically. And remember, because he's already got single factor from this guy here, I only need single factor onboard to turn him into a red and double chevron. This guy here, at first thoughts, in my eyes, that looks smaller than a regular HAFU, but because he's got the 3 in the middle, we know that he's not off board, he is actually on board as well. So we've got the full whammy with him. We've got single factor authentication from us on board, and we've got single factor authentication here from the donor surveillance aircraft. So absolutely certain he's a bad guy. Ambiguous. The AWACS has determined it's a hostile. We have not yet successfully single-factor authenticated him. That, for a moment, I thought was an off-board friendly, but I think it's actually just a part of the compass rose, so we'll ignore that. Again, ambiguous, so just the same as that basically, but closer, so higher in the threat priority. There's a MiG-29 RWR there, and so if we draw a line from us to that, that is probably the MiG-29. The other reason I know it's a MiG-29 probably is because he's heading towards us instead of ignoring us like most of these others are. So he's probably going to come and shoot me down. Finally, this one. So I believe what we've got here is I've in the same place as this pretty much. We're scaled out to 160 now. I've turned my radar off now, just to show you what it would be like. And we've got all of the same contacts as we had there, or a similar amount of contacts. No, they are the same. They're the same. It's the same map as this here. Except this is what happens when I turn my radar off. All of a sudden, this guy goes to this here, off-board only friendly. And these guys all go off-board too. So they all become, this guy here, off-board hostile. So these are no longer ambiguous because I'm no longer picking them up on my radar. So the only factor of authentication is coming from this guy here, and therefore they are considered hostile. Now I can't shoot at these guys here because I'm not painting them with my radar. My radar's off. If I turn my radar on, it goes back to this. And to turn these guys from ambiguous to full hostile, I'll have to go and IFF them manually, one-factor authentication. Okay, so apologies that it took so long, but that's shown all the possibilities we could ever have until, until stuff might be added to the Hornet and maybe additional stuff is given to us. That shows what we should be seeing and why we'll be seeing the things that we see on the SA page. So next we're going to get back to the main video and show the actual workings of it. Next is friend. You can click on it off no ID, RWR ID. And what that does is basically allows you to hide or show friendly RWR data around the outside of the SA page compass rose. Next is the RWR. We can have it all, or critical lethal, or critical, or off. We'll have it in all. So that means which it's just a way of decluttering the display. It's saying which RWR signals do we want to display? All of them? Everything that's an RWR? Or only, if we remember, the RWR up here, let me just take us up here, is a threat-based RWR. Its rings do not denote range, they denote threat. I.e., is a target locking us up with a radar? Are they not locking us up? Are they firing a missile at us and whatnot? And so we can see this MiG-29 is currently out very far and not much of a threat at the moment. If it was close in and firing at us a missile, it would become critical, and then it would only show up in that case on the SA page if I put this in critical only. Okay, so it's just another visual filter. IFF doesn't do anything at the moment. I'm not sure what that's going to do when we get it. Here is our current bra from Bulls. So from Bulls to us, we've got 301 degrees for 51 miles. This stuff doesn't work at the moment, but it promises to be pretty cool. Link 4, that's the old school network, the old 70s network that the Tomcats use, and they use that Link 4 in DCS. So it appears that we're going to be able to communicate with the old Link 4 network of the F-14s, but we don't know anything more about that. Here's our FLIR. It's an option that will allow us to display the track point of a targeting pod in the SA page. Now, we don't have a targeting pod yet, but when we do have one, obviously it will be implemented. Harm, pretty much similar. If we're using a harm in pre-planned mode, which isn't available yet, we're going to be able to see essentially where that harm is either targeting or pointing. I don't know the fine details of that on that SA page. Okay, so that's the SA page and the big main sensor page shown. So I'm just going to put everything back to normal and then get out of here. So back to normal, back to normal, back to SA. And in fact, one thing I should have shown if we just go back in sensor is that we can, if we've got unknown targets, unknown in terms of IFF, which these guys all are, we can filter them out by clicking unknown, and you can see they've all gone. Back on. Okay, next a quick look at our radar. So our attack radar, I'm just going to zoom out here. Click, click. So you can see this is essentially, or I should say this is just a copy of this, because all the information on the SA page is coming purely from me at the moment. And to prove that, what I can do is actually turn my radar off, stop it from transmitting. So if I just get it at a decent moment, I'm going to go erase silent. So I've erased our contacts on the radar and stopped the radar from actually transmitting and receiving, and you can see all of our contacts, or apart from the RWR nails, have now disappeared. And let's just put that back. Repopulate, and we've repopulated. So the next is, how do we IFF, bearing in mind that we've got no Datalink partners, and update the the SA page with that IFF information? We need to basically determine whether these tracks are friend or foe. First is a transponder request, and that is where we send a request out. Every aircraft in the world has a transponder, and we send a request out to that transponder on that aircraft and ask it, are you hostile or are you friendly? The way we do that is with a mode 4 interrogation. Now, mode 4 just means it's for military use, and their transponders in the military are encrypted, for security. If we wanted to do a civilian plane, we'd do a mode 3, and I don't think that's available in DCS, at least at the moment. But it's just something to bear in mind. So we're going to do a mode 4, and it's all done pretty much automatically, the selection of which mode. And to do a mode 4 interrogation, all we have to do is make this page our center of interest with the diamond at the top here. We're going to use our TDC slews to move this cursor around. We're going to move it on top of a target, and then we're going to press center select switch depress, and it's going to do the mode 4 interrogation. And if the contact or the target that we are interrogating is a friendly, then that transponder will contact us and say, yes, hello, I'm a friendly, and that will immediately show up on our SA page as a friendly, which we'll go do shortly. Because we're pressed for time, I'm going to do things in a different order, because this guy here is almost on top of us, and so we've got to skip forward a bit. Now, if we did a mode 4 transponder interrogation against a hostile, then it wouldn't respond to us because we don't have the encryption key. So if we did a mode 4 against this guy here, who I know because I built the mission is going to be a hostile, he will not respond, so we won't get anything. So by the laws of deduction, that would mean that he's a hostile, right? Well, no, it's not quite that simple, because as we saw earlier in the charts, if it's hostile, and assuming we have no off-board Datalink contributors, then we have to have a 2-factor authentication. So that means we have to have a rejected mode 4 attempt and the NCTR. So if you've done your mode 4 and your NCTR, then you can confirm that guy is hostile, and then it will update on the SA page here. Now, to do the NCTR, the mode 4 transponder interrogation can be done, as far as I can see, at any range within reasonable 100 miles or something like that. The NCTR has to be done within 25 miles, and the target needs to be within 30 degrees of the nose or 30 degrees of the tail in consideration of its aspect. So it's got to be heading roughly towards us or roughly away from us for the NCTR to come back with what we call a GEM, J-E-M, a jet engine modulation print. And the way that works in real life, I believe, is that we are using our actual radar scan to scan that guy, and some of that radiation will hit either his front stage compressor blades, or probably, I'm assuming, the rear turbine blades, bounce off, come back to our antennae, and then our NCTR system can decide from that print what kind of jet it is, because a flanker has different engine compressor blades to an F-15 and so on. So in real life, the NCTR can deduce the coalition of that aircraft by its type of aircraft. So if it sees it's a flanker, it knows it's a certain coalition, because in real life you would know which aircraft belong to which coalition. Now in DCS we don't know that. We could have any plane flying for any coalition. That's just how DCS works. So they've had to change it ever so slightly so that the GEM will firstly indeed tell us what type of airframe it is, but it will also magically be able to tell you which coalition it is for the restrictions that I just explained. So to recap, if I want to double check that one of these contacts is hostile without any Datalink buddies, I'm going to have to mode 4 it, which I'll do in a second, and then I will do an NCTR. To do that, I have to get an STT lock. This is not a radar video, so we'll just go and do it. STT lock on this hostile here, and then press again sensor select switch depress, and that will get our IFF if within the parameters I've described. Okay, we're gonna have to do it quick because he's close and we're running out of time. If we get too close, it just won't work. Right, so we're going to unpause. We're going to make it center of interest, sensor select switch right. We're going to go over this guy. We're going to press sensor select switch depress for the mode 4. And it hasn't updated anything because of the reasons we've talked about earlier. So next we're going to STT lock it. It's STT locked, and we're going to hover over it again and press sensor select switch depress again. And this time it's determined that he is a hostile. It's given us a chevron. We've done our 2 methods of identification. We've done our mode 4 transponder interrogation, and we've locked him within 25 miles and a hot aspect and got our NCTR. And you can see now he is red because we've double checked, if you like, the two modes of identification that he's red, and he's got the chevron on here. We've also got the star here. That's just showing that he's the guy that we've got our current STT lock on. Okay, so that's that guy sorted. And if we turned our radar off again and he disappeared, and then we turned our radar on again and he repopulated this, he would stay as hostile. Now we can do that because, remember, these track files are kept separate in memory. They have like a little computer aboard the aircraft. I even know the computer for the F-14, but it's an Intel 0086 or something, but I'm not sure what it is for the Hornet. And it keeps and remembers these track files in case you lose radar lock or whatever for at least a certain amount of time. So then if you manage to regain the lock, then it remembers that target or that track's details. Right, so that's him done. Now we're going to go and do the other guys. So we're going to unpause. We're going to unlock the guy. We're going to go zoom out. We've got these other guys here. Now we can't NCTR these guys because they're all out 25 miles. But what we can do is mode 4 them. And if one is a friendly, then it will respond. So let's start doing that. Going to do him. No response. No response. Oh, yes, sorry. Yep, my bad. I a bit premature there. See, I mode forward that guy. Mode forward that guy by moving the cursor over to him and pressing sensor select switch depress. And you can see it has indeed put a dome and green. So it's shown us from our sensor that he is indeed a friendly. Because with friendlies, remember, we don't need two methods of identification. We just need the mode 4 will be fine. And out of good practice, I'm just going to do the others. In fact, I'm not going to do these manually. I'm going to turn my latent track while scan on, and it will do it automatically for the others. So data, latent track while scan on, get out of data. And what I'm going to do is just hover over these guys. And what it does is, after about a second of hovering over it, presses mode 4 interrogate for you automatically. And if one of those is a friendly, it will come up with a dome. Out of interest, the track while scan, the latent track while scan gives you a bit of extra information. We've got blast. We've got our Mach 0.6 there, and our Angel 16.5 Imperial there, and our priority number there. But again, it's neither here nor there with this video. So that's shown how we can IFF these targets. And that's all we can do at the moment, because those are the only guys that were in parameters. We've IFF all of the friendlies. That one there was the only friendly. And this guy here was the only hostile that was in parameters, range and aspect for us to IFF him. All of these guys are outside of range. So with just us and without any other Link 16 donors or partners, that's as far as we can do. It's the best situational awareness picture we can get. There's nothing else we can do. So the next thing for us to go and do is to add a partner. So we're going to go out and we're going to add an AWACS to exactly the same situation. We've got this guy here. We're going to turn him back on. We're going to save that. We're going to go in and we're going to get a completely different picture this time. We're in now. I'm just going to set our screens up. Okay, we've got everything set up. So this time we can probably leave it unpaused or active pause. We can let these guys come and go. So the first thing to note, in fact, I prefer the quiet. First thing to note is that we've now got our first Datalink Link 16 partner, and it's this guy here. So what do we know about this guy here? We know that he's a friendly because he's green. We also know that he is a participant, a partner in our Link 16 network, because he's got this little dot here on the left. As well as that, we've got a bit of logic that we need to look at here. So there are currently 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 contacts, targets in front of us, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 there are, and that guy, out of interest, is going to be the friendly again. So that guy, that guy, that guy, that guy, and that guy are all currently unknown. They're yellow at the moment, which means that they are unknown from my point of view, from what I have contributed to this network. However, they are not unknown to the AWACS. The AWACS has IFF'd all of these guys and got some rebacks on them. And you can see that because the bottom half of the symbol, in this case, is a chevron, the hostile, hostile, friend, hostile, hostile. We'll talk about this guy in a second. So the bottom half, i.e. the bit that's not provided by us on these symbols, that's been provided from our partner here, is shown by those symbols. We've got a pretty damn good idea which of these guys is hostile and which of them is friendly. But to turn them the colours, the correct colours, and to have the upper half, the element that's provided by me, I would have to go through and do my interrogations again. And we'll go through and do that again. And that will give us the complete picture between what I see in combination with what the AWACS sees. So if that's the case, then why is this guy a chevron on top and chevron on bottom, even though I've just got in the game and I haven't interrogated anyone yet? How can that possibly be? Well, the reason is that the same reason that he doesn't have a threat priority number at the moment, that I can't actually see him. So all of that information that's building up this guy on my situational awareness screen is coming purely from our Datalink partner, which is this AWACS here. And just to prove that, what I'm going to do is just look up there, and you can see, indeed, I can't see that guy. The reason is because it's a long way away and it's a fighter and it's just too small radar cross-section for me to see. So that's something that needs bearing in mind. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to unpause and I'm going to IFF this guy just as we did before, just to show the difference that that's going to make. So let's make this our centre of interest. We are going to first mode 4 him. Oh, we've already got him. Now that's interesting. Note that I haven't actually locked the guy in an STT lock. All I did was move the cursor over him and it went red. In fact, it went red before I had even actually pressed the mode 4 interrogate button. So let's deduce that logic. What it was is, you remember for a hostile that we need 2 methods of identification. Well, that's still true, but already we've got one method, which is by the AWACS. He's already IFF this guy. That's one method counted for. And so all I had to do was the mode 4 interrogate this time to get the second method. And if we go down to the screen down here, he now is completely red. In our situational awareness screen, he's now got 2 methods of identification. So in this case, with the AWACS partner, I don't need to lock him up in an STT lock and use my NCTR. I can still use my NCTR if I want, and the reason I could do that is because I would get close, and as well as IFF, I can actually find out what type of aircraft it is. That's always useful, as well as knowing his coalition. And the other reason that it went to a chevron before I pressed the sensor select switch depress was that if I went to data here, I would find that I've got latent track while scan on, I imagine. There you go. And if you remember, with latent track while scan on, if you hover the cursor above someone for about half a second, then it will mode 4 interrogate automatically. So what I'm going to do now is try getting this guy over here. So I'm just going to unpause and move my cursor over to him. And you can see with the latent track while scan on, then he's, after a very short time of hovering the cursor over him, is automatically interrogated him and determined that he is a friend. Now, to begin with, I wasn't sure if this was working by a mode 4 interrogation or by an NCTR. But looking at this, you can see that this guy is over 40 miles away. That's too far for the NCTR to work. So in this case, it must be the mode 4 interrogation that's happening, like I said before, and that's what's allowing to complete the picture. So we're going to do the rest of them. This guy here. Took a little bit of time, but it updated him, the mode 4 interrogation, as a friendly. And we can see that we're busy populating this page now. So we've got all these guys done. Next, we're going to get these 2 done. Interrogated and done. That'll update there on red. It can take a few seconds before it'll actually update. There you go, we've got him. It's number 3 in the order, number 4 in the priority order, now 5 because there's another one. And that's him done. And you can see that this guy, if you remember, this guy here was a full diamond before without a priority number in, and that was as we agreed because the AWACS could see it, but we couldn't. Well, we can now see him. He is now close enough that we can see him on our radar, so we can now complete the interrogation with our track while scan on. We can come out of the data and mode 4 him, and that is now him. So we've now got a full picture along with our RWR here showing that that guy we're pretty sure is a MiG-29, and we know all of these guys what their coalition is. Now we've just caught this at a really interesting time. You see, at this particular frame I've caught it, the bottom of the symbols, the ones provided by my Datalink partner, has disappeared, and that's going to mean that they're flashing, and that's going to mean that they will flash for about 2 seconds, and then the information from my partner will cease. So what that is that we've caught our partner at a precarious moment. Now I don't know what that is. Maybe he's turning a corner, maybe he's going to bank. It's probably because he's turning a corner and he's had to bank and his dish is no longer seeing these guys, something along those lines, or maybe they're too close, and then we've lost contact from the partner. Luckily I can still track them, so they're flashing and they've disappeared completely now. So what we can say now is that this guy and this guy can be seen by our AWACS partner here, but this guy, this guy, this guy, and this guy cannot be seen by a partner. When it's flashing, it means it's gone into memory mode, which means, like previously, we are relying on the memory mode of the aircraft to interpret where that aircraft is, and when it stopped flashing and completely disappeared, that means it is no longer in memory mode, at least that bottom half of the HAFU, and it's just gone until it's picked up again by the AWACS. But note how the tracks haven't disappeared, and that's because I'm still highlighting them with my information from my radar here. So that's something to bear in mind. Let's just carry on doing that, see if anything interesting comes of that. And look, these two are about to disappear. Whatever that... what are we going to see what it's doing, just out of interest? Yeah, yes, I thought so. He's banking. And remember, his dish works kind of like laterally. So with that dish pointing up in the air like that, it's scanning out there. It's no longer seeing the bad guys. So that's why that's happening. So if I were to turn my radar off, then I would lose all of the contacts. Why don't we just do that? I've never actually tried this before, so just stand by. Erase silent, and now they've all gone though, because his dish is in the wrong place, my dish is turned off. Okay, let's turn that back on, and what we should do is see that those tracks repopulate with the IFF information again, because that information has been stored in memory. This guy is now visible by the AWACS for whatever reason, just in his particular position. You can see we've got the bottom half of his coalition symbol. So next I want to interrogate some of these guys and get some more information about them. We had a bit look at this earlier, but I want to get a bit more information from them. So this guy here, I would love to have a look in his engines and see what type of actual aircraft he is. So I'm going to make this the centre of interest. If I can, there we go. I'm going to move it down and highlight him. It's currently unknown. We've got all the information about him that we can find out, except we haven't got what type of aircraft he is. And the rule is, as long as you're 25 miles, within 25 miles, and he's hot, in fact, he's right there, so he's only a couple of miles away, we should be able to get a look inside the engines with our radar. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to find him on here. He must be that guy there. I'm going to make this my centre of interest. I'm going to move it down there, see if I can get a look at him there. Has that done it? No. Well, it's not. The track while scan hasn't done it, so what I'm going to try and do is lock him up with an STT. Locked him up with an STT. And annoyingly, I would usually get that populate with what type of aircraft. I think it's because of his aspect. Oh, I see. It's because I've currently got the game in active pause mode. Now, that's probably not something you're going to be doing and a problem you're going to be having, but because I'm having to stop this and explain it all the time, I keep it in active pause. And what that means, because in active pause, my aircraft is not actually moving through the air at all, it's static, that it cannot calculate the vectors of me in comparison to hostile aircraft and whatnot. And hence, even though he is actually heading towards me, in this case, because I've got it paused, it doesn't understand that it's coming towards me. So it's just a limitation we have at the moment. I'll try unactive pausing it very quickly so it fixes it. Got it! Yeah, so it's just because it was paused for that reason. So I've locked him up now. He's, where's our distance? Yeah, sorry, there he is. From me, he's 10 miles. He's now, I can see he's a Tu-95, so he's a bomber. That's because we got him within the head-on aspect and 25 miles and did our NCTR. So that's how we can tell the extra little bit of information. But we couldn't do that with these guys because they're too far away, and let's just prove that quickly. Someone else, I'm going to lock this guy here. I've got an STT on him now, and where is he on? I'm going to make this centre of interest, move over to him, and you can see that although I've got him locked up again in STT, he's still unknown because he's out of parameters. He's 29 miles away and he's not a hot aspect. So that shows how within the parameters we can determine what type of aircraft they are. And another important point to point out is that knowing the airframe of the aircraft on the Datalink does not just come from our NCTR. That is one way of doing it, but it also can come from off-board. So, for instance, a certain track file may have its airframe distinguished by an off-board surveillance AWACS or something like that. So that's something to remember. Now notice this guy in the attack radar is a complete diamond with another chevron above it. And when it has another chevron above it in the attack radar display, I'm pretty sure that means that that target on the attack radar has also been IFF'd off-board, i.e. by a friendly fighter or surveillance. Okay, so we've looked at how we can identify the different aircraft, the logic between what the AWACS sees and what we see, our interactions into the data link. So all we've really got to just to show now is that we can have our sensor. We can first of all turn off our contributors into our data link with PPLI, turn it off. So we can no longer see the AWACS, obviously, and we've got no friendly fighter contributors, so that would do nothing. We'd also turn off what the AWACS is contributing to the SA page here. So surveillance off. So if I pause it there, it's kind of like back to how it was before we had any data link partners now. We've only got the top bit of symbology, so that's what I see. We don't have any of the bottom bit, and luckily I've already IFF'd them already, so I've set their track coalition here to red and green and whatnot. And then we can turn our friend back on. There he is, and turn his information back on. And now we've got the complete symbols. So one thing I need to quickly add is that so far in this video we've been manually IFFing the tracks via the attack radar screen. But just remember they can also be done on the actual SA screen itself as well. So that's all I can think of showing with our partner. And so the final step of the video is to just add everything in now so we can have a good look at everything. So we've got our AWACS from the last session. We've also now got someone in our group. We've got this guy. He is participant B in my fighter group of FA-18C Hornets. And take note that his call sign here is Enfield 12, and I imagine I am Enfield 11. And as well as that, so he's our fighter-to-fighter donor that we've got. AWACS is our surveillance donor. And we've got a second fighter-to-fighter donor here. We've got a F-15C. That is going to be a participant in our Datalink 16. As well as that, we've got some ground targets. So we've got an active SA-6 here and an SA-10 S300P there. And they are going to show up on our Datalink as well as all the other guys that we had before. So let's get going. Okay, in we go. Double check our Datalink is on. Him out the way, get our SA page on. Let's give it a second for the Datalink participants to populate, and I think we've done that. Zoom out a little. Okay, so let's have a look. We've got us in the middle here. We've got our F-15 there. You can see here's a participant in our Datalink, which you can see there. Here's a donor. There is our AWACS. Here's a donor in our Datalink as well. There, out of interest, is the SA-6 and its claimed critical or lethal range. There is the SA-10 and its claimed lethal range. And these lethal range, I believe, are calculated on kind of worst case scenarios. So if we were flying high and fast towards the SAMs. And this is really useful in our missions. I wasn't a fan of this when it came out, but now it's absolutely indispensable to have this information. And I struggle to fly without a data link nowadays. And we've got our wingman. I'm just going to have to zoom in here to get a good look at him. There he is. He's B. So I'm A, and he's part of my group, so he's B. And we could also have C and D. We can tell he's a donor in our data link because he's got the donor dot on him. And if we wanted a bit more information about him, we would make this our center of interest with center switch down. And then we would move our TDC to him. And we could see now that he is an FA-18. He is ED12. And that means the first and the last letter of his name. And what was that? That was Enfield, and he is Enfield 12. He's got 10,800 pounds of fuel on board, and his BRAF from me to him is 02340 miles. And if we zoom out again, if we went to our sensor, we could turn our fighter input off so that all input coming from fighters will go off. In this case, it's going to stay the same because we've also got a surveillance aircraft there that's highlighting these guys. Okay, that's all I can think of showing on the SA page at the moment. We'll update this as and when needed. Hope that helps, and see you later.